Okay. Rambam, Maimonides' teachings, the laws of Toin Vinitan, of prosecutor and defendant, we're in the 7th chapter. Let us get right into it. Okay. When a person admits that he owes a mana is like $100 to a colleague, huh? Like 100, well, let's say we're calling it $100, right? Mana means 100 of, back in the day, shekel, whatever it was. Dinarim, actually, not shekel. To a colleague in the presence of two witnesses, right? And he makes his statement as an admission and not as a casual matter of conversation. His remarks serve as a basis for testimony. This applies even if he did not charge the witnesses to serve in that capacity, and the plaintiff was not present. So let's say we're talking about after the loan, right? We're not talking about when the loan was made. That's very different, right? Because the witnesses witnessed the loan itself. What are the witnesses, testifying here? Only to the fact that the borrower is saying to two people, I borrowed, $100 from so-and-so, right? And you're not saying it in casual matter of conversation, right? So they can serve as witnesses in this capacity, even when the plaintiff is not present. If the plaintiff lodged a claim against him and he denied making these statements, his words are not heeded because he said it in front of two witnesses as like to make a statement about it. And he's required to make restitution on the basis of the testimony of the witnesses. If there was only one witness present when he made the statements, so then it will not oblige him, right? Because you need two witnesses to oblige any payment. So he's required to take an oath. But one witness makes him now obliged to take an oath, for he made a statement as an admission. If after the witness came and testified, and the defendant claimed, I made the admission in order not to appear wealthy, his word is accepted, but he is required to take a shvus hesses. So remember that, the claim over here of the plaintiff, he's got no other claim except that he's making a claim that, he owes me money. There isn't any documentation to it because often people would give a loan, a free loan, verbally, even though the sages said don't do that, but often that would happen. You didn't have a piece of parchment and a pen back in the day with you. So a guy was there, he was in, trouble, he needed help, so you lent him, right? So there were no witnesses. Only afterwards, right, is the borrower saying, now it's in front of one witness. So one witness does not oblige. You can only oblige him not to make payment, but oblige him to make a test to testify. And now he's saying, I only said that because I didn't want to appear wealthy. That's accepted. And therefore, but it's still, he has to make an oath. Shvuas Hesses is a rabbinic oath to exonerate him from the claim by the defendant, by the sorry,
The claim by the borrower.
the claim, no, the claim by the lender, right? He's the plaintiff. The plaintiff is the lender, right? He wants his money back, right? If the plaintiff was with the witnesses at the time that the defendant made the admission, now this is different, right? Till now, we were speaking about the plaintiff wasn't there when he made the admission. But let's say the plaintiff was there. The plaintiff is the lender, right? When the admission was made, he cannot claim that he made an admission so as not to appear wealthy. You can't make that. Or it would make no sense for him to make such allegedly false statement in the presence of person and witnesses. The entire purpose was to create an impression that he was not wealthy. He could have just as easily claimed to have owed another person. Aha. In other words, if it's only a claim that I'm not wealthy, like people don't want to appear wealthy because otherwise what happens is they're going to get a lot of people coming to them needing money. Free loan. Remember, it's a free loan, right? So people don't want to appear wealthy. So if it was done in front of the plaintiff with one witness, and you didn't want to appear wealthy, so you didn't have to admit that you owe the plaintiff. Could have said I owed somebody else, except you wouldn't do that because it would be a lie in front of the plaintiff. That's why you said that you owed the plaintiff. So now you can't use that argument. If it's not in front of the plaintiff, so then, yeah, that's a different story. So if, however, he claims that he paid the debt afterwards, his word is accepted, but he is required to take a shvus hesses. But if he claimed not about appearing wealthy, but I paid it. Again, there's no proof here. The only thing that there's a witness is to the fact that the defendant said that I owed money. Okay, but I said that 2 weeks ago. Since then, I paid it. So there's a problem over here, right? So why are we taking this? Why is the oath given to the defendant? Anybody? Why isn't the oath given to the plaintiff? Because if the oath was given to the plaintiff, what would that mean? No, if the plaintiff would be able to take an oath, right, that you owe me money, that would mean the plaintiff would be able to take money out from the defendant. Can't do that just based on the oaths, right? So simply, right? Because you're taking money from somebody, and we have to go on what's the word I'm looking for? Right. If you want to extract money from somebody, so it can't be because you just took an oath that will extract it, right? You need more proof than that. And therefore, who would take the oath is the defendant in order that it would absolve him from payment. And of course, taking the oath is, a scare because, you're taking an oath. Okay, halacha number 2. Whenever a person makes an admission in the presence of 2 witnesses, now he's making 2 witnesses. He cannot claim again, I was speaking facetiously. Can't say that. Needless to say, this applies if he made the admission before 3 people. Instead, he's obligated to pay the sum that he admitted. Right? Remember, 2 or more witnesses creates a obligation. For whenever a person makes a statement as an admission, it is if he charges them with serving as witnesses. Nevertheless, a legal record of his statements is not composed unless he charges them. Compose a record, sign it, and give it to the plaintiff. If he said that, right? Even if he charged them, they must consult with him a second time before they give it to the plaintiff, as we've explained, right? Others, they have to write the document out, but then they have to show it to the defendant, that he's okay with it, and then they could give it to the plaintiff. Similarly, if a person makes an admission in the court after he was summoned, so now he's making admission in the court. A legal record may be composed, as will be explained in the following halacha. This applies provided the court knows the identity of both principals, so that the people will not perpetrate deception to obligate another person. So the court has to know both of them. Why? Because you know what's possible? You know what's possible? The two people, defendant and plaintiff and defendant, lender and borrower, could be making something up between them. Well, how? Right? Because if I make up that I owe you money, and if I don't have the way to pay it, so then you could, then the plaintiff could go into if I have no way to pay it, not movable objects and not field any landed field, any karka, right? Any land. So then if I sold land to somebody as a borrower, right, after I borrowed money, that field is now could be expropriated from the purchaser and taken away from the purchaser. Is that clear? Lender, borrower. Lend money, 100 manu, right? Owed. If he can't pay, if he doesn't have the money to pay, and he had property that he sold after the loan, not before the loan, after the loan, that property is now subject to the lender expropriating it from the purchaser. That's a law that we've learned. We learned that very clear, that law, right? So these two people could be making up between them something that might not be real in order to take away from the purchaser of his field, right? They'll go after him. So we have to be careful of that. Court has to be careful of that. Okay? That's the law. That's why the court has to know both principles involved in order to make certain that they're not being deceitful. Okay. I thought we were going to do Chumash and Rashi, but I would like to, but it's not going to happen now, unfortunately. All right, folks.